1996 wasn't just another year in wrestling, it was the year the war went nuclear. It was a time of shocking betrayals, career-defining moments, and backstage controversies that have been almost completely lost to time. You definitely remember the big headlines, but some of the most important moments are the ones you've likely forgotten. Today, we're digging up 10 shocking moments from WWE and WCW in 1996 that didn't just make headlines, they defined an era. Let's be honest, 1996 in wrestling was pure chaos. The Monday Night War wasn't a friendly ratings competition anymore. It was a full-on, scorched-earth battle for survival. Down in Atlanta, Eric Bischoff, backed by Ted Turner's seemingly bottomless wallet, was throwing everything at the wall. He was poaching WWE's biggest stars, giving away their pre-taped results live on Nitro, and creating a product that felt raw, unpredictable, and dangerous. Meanwhile, up in Stamford, Vince McMahon was getting backed into a corner. The Hulkamania era was a distant memory, and the so-called new generation was having a tough time catching fire. The larger-than-life heroes of the 80s were gone, replaced by a roster of talented guys desperately trying to find an identity. 1996 is the year that Pressure Cooker finally exploded. On screen, the storylines were pushing the limits of TV, while backstage, real-life drama and audacious power plays were changing wrestling forever. So today, we're counting down 10 moments from that insane year that you've probably let slip from your memory. Number 10. WWE's bizarre bait-and-switch, the fake Razor and Diesel. In the spring of 1996, WWE took a massive shot to the chin. Two of its top guys, Scott Hall and Kevin Nash, Razor Ramon and Diesel, bolted for the guaranteed money of WCW. Their exit didn't just leave a huge hole in the main event scene, it was a public relations disaster. And when Hall and Nash showed up on WCW television as the Outsiders, still acting a whole lot like their WWE characters, Vince McMahon was furious. So, what was his master plan? In one of the most baffling moves in wrestling history, McMahon decided if he couldn't have the actors, he'd just recast the roles. In September, commentator Jim Ross, who was in the middle of a weird heel turn, started teasing that Razor Ramon and Diesel were coming back to Monday Night Raw. The fans were buzzing. Even WCW was reportedly fooled, allegedly offering Hall and Nash even more money to stay put. Then the big night came. Jim Ross stood in the ring and, with a perfectly straight face, introduced Razor Ramon, only for a guy named Rick Bognar to walk out doing a lame Scott Hall impression. A week later, Glenn Jacobs, the man who would become Kane, showed up as the new Diesel. And the crowd's reaction? Not anger, not shock, just pure awkward confusion. It was a petty move meant to prove a legal point, that WWE owned the characters. But all it really did was make the company look second-rate. The whole angle was a spectacular failure and was quietly dropped a few months later, a truly forgotten moment of desperation from the trenches of the war. Number 9. The unspeakable chaos of WCW's Doomsday Cage match. If you want one single match that perfectly captures the beautiful, nonsensical, over-the-top chaos of 1996 WCW, you have to watch the main event of Uncensored. The match was called the Doomsday Cage. In reality, it was a booking train wreck. The story pitted Hulk Hogan and Randy Savage against the Alliance to End Hulkamania, a supergroup of bad guys that included Ric Flair, Arn Anderson, and the entire Dungeon of Doom. The structure itself was a 3-story cage monstrosity. Hogan and Savage had to start at the top and fight their way down through an army of 8 men. This team had monsters like Meng and the Barbarian, legends like Flair, and even a surprise return from Hogan's old rival Zeus, now weirdly called Z-Gangsta. What we got was 25 minutes of pure, unfiltered confusion. Nobody knew the rules, the action was a mess, and the finish was somehow even worse. After brawling through a sea of bodies, Savage pinned Ric Flair, but only after Flair's own partner, Lex Luger, hit him with a loaded glove. And just when you thought it couldn't get any dumber, Hogan's buddy, the Booty Man, ran in to give the good guys frying pans to use as weapons. The match was absolutely shredded by critics and fans. It was a convoluted disaster that proved two guys could beat eight, which, as Arn Anderson later said, just made the audience want to puke. Number 8. The Giant is billed as Andre the Giant's son. In 1995, WCW signed an absolute monster of a prospect, the 7-foot-plus, 400-pound Paul White. He was a freak athlete for his size, and the company knew they had a future superstar. But in the 90s, just being big wasn't enough. You needed a story, and the story they cooked up was a real head-scratcher. When WCW introduced the world to Paul White, they didn't just call him the Giant. They billed him as the kayfabe son of the legendary Andre the Giant. The idea, reportedly pitched by Hulk Hogan, was to instantly create a legacy for this new monster and give him a built-in reason to feud with Hogan, Andre's most famous rival. WCW leaned into it hard, having the Giant mimic Andre's mannerisms and wear a similar singlet. For a lot of fans, this just felt wrong. Andre was a revered icon, almost completely tied to the WWF, and he had no known children. It came off as a cheap and disrespectful way to cash in on a dead legend's name. While the gimmick gave the Giant instant credibility, he won the WCW World title in his very first match. It was just in poor taste. The Son of Andre angle was thankfully phased out during 1996 after the Giant joined the NWO, letting Paul White finally build his own legacy. But the bizarre origin of his character is a forgotten relic of WCW's often questionable creative choices. Number 7. The real-life backstage brawl. Between Vader and Paul Orndorff backstage in pro wrestling, the line between performance and reality can get blurry, and sometimes it just disappears completely. One of the most legendary backstage fights of the era went down in WCW between the monstrous 450-pound Vader and the veteran Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff, who was working as an agent at the time. The story goes that Vader was late for a show because he was at a company-mandated photo shoot. Orndorff, a guy known for his legitimate toughness and zero tolerance for excuses, confronted him. Words were exchanged, tempers flared, and things got physical. Fast. What happened next is the stuff of wrestling legend. Despite the massive size difference, Orndorff, who was reportedly wearing only flip-flops, didn't just hold his own. He allegedly got the better of the feared super heavyweight in a wild brawl. Accounts from those who saw it are incredible. Orndorff dropped Vader with a barrage of strikes and kept going until the fight was broken up. The fight completely shattered the on-screen aura of the seemingly invincible Vader. The fallout was huge. Vader was reportedly fined, and the incident was a contributing factor to him eventually leaving WCW. It's a forgotten story of when backstage heat boiled over into a real-life David versus Goliath showdown. Number 6. WWE's aggressive and personal Billionaire Ted skits. For years, Vince McMahon had one golden rule: you never mention the other guys. But by 1996, with WCW Monday Nitro kicking his butt in the ratings week after week, that rule went straight into the trash. In its place came one of the strangest and most personal attacks in wrestling history: the Billionaire Ted skits. Starting in early 1996, WWE began airing vignettes called Billionaire Ted's Wrastlin' War Room. They were direct parodies of WCW's owner, Ted Turner, portraying him as a clueless buffoon. The skits also mercilessly mocked WCW's top stars. Hulk Hogan became the Huckster, Randy Savage was the Nacho Man, and Gene Okerlund was Scheme Gene. At first, it was just poking fun at the age of WCW's roster, but the skits quickly turned nasty. The parodies started referencing Turner's personal life and his marriage to Jane Fonda. They got so personal that the USA Network, which aired Raw, eventually forced Vince to stop airing them. It was a fascinating and forgotten look at just how bitter and ugly the Monday Night War had truly become. Number 5. the NWO takes out the boss. By the summer of 1996, the outsiders had arrived and were causing chaos. But one question remained. Were they just a couple of rogue wrestlers, or something far more dangerous? At the Great American Bash, we got our answer. Scott Hall and Kevin Nash had been demanding a match, and WCW executive Eric Bischoff was the one who had to deliver the news. He came out to the entrance stage to be interviewed, only to be cornered by Hall and Nash. After a tense back and forth, Nash grabbed Bischoff and, in a truly shocking moment, powerbombed him off the stage and through a table below. This was completely unprecedented. You didn't just see authority figures get physically annihilated like this. It was a statement. This wasn't about contracts or matches anymore. It was a hostile takeover. While this moment is often overshadowed by what happened a month later at Bash at the Beach, it was the powerbomb on Bischoff that cemented the NWO as a legitimate, terrifying threat that was playing by a completely different set of rules. We're halfway through our list, and it's pretty clear that 1996 was an absolutely unhinged year for wrestling. If you're enjoying this look back at the stories that define the era, do us a huge favor and hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into wrestling history, and let us know in the comments. Which of these moments do you actually remember seeing? All right, let's get back to it. Number 4. Pillman's Got a Gun. The WWE wasn't quite the Attitude Era yet, but the seeds were being planted, and no single moment pushed the boundaries in 1996 like the infamous Pillman's Got a Gun angle. Brian Pillman, who was living his loose cannon gimmick 24/7, had a real-life ankle injury turned into a storyline where he was brutally attacked by his former partner, Stone Cold Steve Austin. This led to a segment on the November 4th episode of Raw that would go down in history. WWE made the insane decision to broadcast live from Pillman's actual house in Kentucky, where a supposedly vulnerable Pillman was waiting with his wife. All night, Austin promised he was going to pay him a visit. The tension built until Austin finally arrived, broke into the house, and was met by a chilling sight. Brian Pillman, holding a 9mm pistol, aimed right at him. As Pillman's friends tried to hold Austin back, the camera feed conveniently cut out, followed by sounds of a struggle and Pillman screaming uncensored profanity. The segment was so controversial it triggered a flood of complaints from viewers and a furious reaction from the USA Network, which threatened to cancel Raw. It was a moment that blurred the line between entertainment and reality so much that it almost got WWE kicked off the air, a shocking and often overlooked preview of the era that would ultimately save the company. Number 3. The Clique's Curtain Call. For generations, wrestlers lived by one sacred rule: protect the business. You never, ever break character in front of a live crowd. On May 19th, 1996, at a house show in Madison Square Garden, that rule wasn't just broken, it was completely shattered. It was the farewell for Kevin Nash and Scott Hall, who were on their way to WCW. They were part of The Clique, a powerful backstage friend group that included Shawn Michaels, Triple H, and Sean Waltman. In the main event, the good guy WWE champion Shawn Michaels beat the bad guy Diesel in a cage match. After the match, Razor Ramon, a good guy, came out and hugged Michaels. Fine. But then, the villainous Hunter Hearst Helmsley came out and joined them. The 4 men, 2 heroes, 2 villains, shared a group hug in the middle of the ring, a clear nod to the fans that their friendship was real. This unscripted moment, known forever as the Curtain Call, sent shockwaves through wrestling. It was a blatant breaking of character in the world's most famous arena. Vince McMahon was reportedly beyond furious, not just for exposing the business, but for the disrespect it showed. This one act of defiance would have massive, unexpected consequences that would directly lead to the creation of wrestling's biggest star ever. Number 2. Steve Austin's rise from the ashes of backstage punishment. Everyone remembers the Austin 3:16 speech at the 1996 King of the Ring. It's the promo that basically launched the Attitude Era. But what people forget is why Steve Austin was even in that spot. He wasn't supposed to win. The man originally scheduled to win the 1996 King of the Ring was Hunter Hearst Helmsley. So, what happened? The curtain call. When Vince McMahon needed someone to punish for the incident at MSG, his hands were tied. Shawn Michaels was his champion. Hall and Nash were already gone. That left Triple H to take the heat. His planned coronation as King of the Ring was canceled as punishment for breaking kayfabe. With that spot suddenly open, WWE Creative had to pivot. They gave the tournament win to a tough, talented, but still developing mid-card heel, Stone Cold Steve Austin. After beating Jake the Snake Roberts in the finals, Austin cut his legendary off-the-cuff promo where he sneered, "Austin 3:16 says I just whipped your ass." The rest is history. A moment born from backstage politics created the biggest superstar of the modern era. Without the curtain call and Triple H's punishment, the Austin 3:16 phenomenon might never have happened, and the entire Monday Night War could have gone very, very differently. Number 1. The immense, forgotten risk of Hulk Hogan's heel. Hulk Hogan turning heel at Bash at the Beach 1996 is probably the most famous moment in modern wrestling history. It launched the NWO and changed the business forever. But its massive success has made us forget the terrifying career-ending risk it was, and how close it came to never happening at all. By 1996, plenty of fans were tired of the red and yellow, say your prayers and eat your vitamins routine. But Hogan was still a global icon and a hero to millions of kids. Turning him into a bad guy was simply unthinkable. Eric Bischoff pitched the idea, but Hogan was terrified, convinced it would kill his brand and his legacy. He was so hesitant, in fact, that WCW had a backup plan ready. If Hogan said no, the third man was going to be Sting. Even as the pay-per-view was live on the air, Hogan still hadn't shown up to the building or confirmed he was going through with it. He finally arrived less than an hour before the main event. When he walked down that aisle and dropped the leg on Randy Savage, the reaction wasn't a cool heel pop. It was genuine fury. The ring was buried in a sea of garbage. One fan even tried to jump the rail to attack Hogan before security tackled him. For a few scary moments, it looked like the biggest gamble in wrestling history might have failed spectacularly. It wasn't just a storyline. It was a roll of the dice that could have destroyed a legend, but instead, it created a new world order. So there you have it. 1996 was more than just a year. It was a pressure cooker. From bizarre booking and corporate warfare to real-life brawls and career-altering gambles, these moments laid the foundation for wrestling's biggest boom period. They proved that sometimes you have to break the rules. They created new stars out of backstage punishment, pushed the boundaries of television, and showed that the biggest risks can lead to the biggest rewards. The war was officially on. All the old rules were gone, and the world of wrestling was never going to be the same. What other forgotten moments from 1996 stick out in your mind? Let us know in the comments below, and thanks for watching.